Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I have not been talking for a while. There we go. This is the session of Mealworms and More on Tuesday, February 28th, last day of February. We will wait till our 4-minute after mark to get rolling, let folks start jumping in, get acclimated, and we'll get rolling. I see some folks coming in. If somebody could do me the obligatory audio and video check, make sure we're good to go, I would greatly appreciate that. Lucas, welcome. Good to see you. It is a gorgeous morning here in central Missouri. Hopefully wherever you're at, you're getting some good weather. If not, hopefully it's coming. Lots of folks joining this morning. Somebody throw a comment in, let me know that audio and video is working okay. Kayla, Mary, I see a lot of folks joining there. We'll get rolling in about 3 more minutes. Worried that I am not seeing any comments. Is anyone commenting? Can anyone comment? Make sure I have not messed anything up here. Oh, everything looks okay. Somebody send me a DM if they are not able to put a comment in. You are entering comments. Dang. All right, Keith, Rodney, thank you. Come on, Facebook. All right, let me log back into... log back in here on the PC. Maybe that will show me live comments. And I think if I leave, everybody gets kicked out. So we're going to try to avoid that. See if I can even see my own comment. Oh, I can see my own comment. That's not going to help very much, though, is it? All right, events happening now. Discussion. Let's see it. Large. All right. We'll see how this rolls. I can see comments on the desktop. All right. We'll see how this rolls. And now I'm on the desktop. And now I am double sounding. Hopefully that works better. Okay. All right, let's roll with that. So we are at our 4 after, so we'll get rolling. Yeah, we'll be all right. I'd rather not kick everyone out and start all over again. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is our routine session of Mealworms and More. Rodney, did the echo chamber end? Shoot me a DM on that. pause for a second just to make sure that it's not still a problem. Okay. So, thank you, sir. Welcome to Mealworms and More. Our goal of this session is to throw out any questions, comments, successes, failures, things that you're doing with your colony, things you want to see, and we'll just chat mealworms for the next hour or so. My name is Justin Meyer. I run Midwest Mealworms here in Ashland, Missouri. I'm an admin in the Mealworm Farming Co-op Facebook group. And we try to do these, at this point, I'm trying to hit every 2 weeks. I was trying to do every week, and I was just missing that. Things have been a little crazy here. So I'm going to aim for every 2 weeks to get these sessions posted and out there. So please throw out your comments. I can't see any of the comments on the live stream here, but I can see them on the PC. So I'll refresh routinely if I need to. Looks like I'm going to have to refresh to see those. But I'll work through those. So there'll be a little bit of a delay today, unfortunately, because of that. If you ask a question and I haven't answered or addressed it in the session here, I'll go back through. This will record automatically. Facebook does that, and then we'll post it to the group so that folks can see this later. So I'll go through and start answering questions and chatting about things that are going on. So I'm going to start rolling through that. Rodney, Bryce, welcome. Angela, good to see you. Chuck, you've been pretty active. Good to see you, sir. Steve, Mary. Chuck just made a cup of coffee. Me too. I've got my rare second cup. So splurging a little bit here today. Sue, welcome to the party. Negative 20 in Saskatoon. Bryce. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Christina, welcome. Had others that do Facebook Live event comment issues suck. Yes. So comments are always fun to deal with. Olivia, welcome. First time here. Thanks for doing this. How long do you boil before placing in dehydrator? How long do you dehydrate on what temp? Would you cook with them in a recipe after boiling but without dehydrating? Olivia, really good questions. I haven't personally boiled mine. I know that there are some folks that have. I've seen some comments and some posts in the group. One of the things I'd suggest is go to the Facebook Mealworm Co-op group and do a search on boil, or search on consume, eat, different terms like that. But I think boil will get you to the one. There was one recently where somebody posted about their process on what they were doing as far as getting them ready to be consumed for humans or by humans. What I usually will do is I will pull them from the farm, let them sit without feed and without moisture for about 5 days, and then I just take them and throw them straight in the oven. The problem with that, and I think what the boiling might address, I can't recall exactly, but the problem with doing it just straight into the oven, I did it on a super low temp, as low as my oven would go. I want to say it was like 160, standard conventional oven. And I think it took about 10 to 15 minutes, but they turn black because what you're doing when you're cooking at that low, even at that low of a level, you're burning off all that fat and oil that's in there. And so it's going to visually look off-putting, but they're still consumable. They're still fine. And I like to use them as a crouton replacement on a salad. They give it that nice texture. You want to make sure that if you're going to boil them, what I would suggest is don't feed them for a few days. That way they get everything out of their system and then go through your process of preparation. You've read that you need to make sure the worms have had veggies in close enough proximity to pupating in order to make it through pupation and becoming a beetle, since they won't eat or drink during that time. What kind of proximity to pupation would you recommend having food in their enclosure? As close as you can get. So from a hydration perspective, and it really depends on what your setup is. So we actually have bins that we dedicate to pupation. So we'll pull and harvest, and all of the large mealworms, we actually keep those. And then we take those and put them into trays on their own. And then we will provide moisture to them every 2 days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday right now. And the goal with providing that moisture is that you provide enough for the tray that they consume it within 24 to 48 hours. That way you reduce your potential for any kind of molding. You're not going to have just gunk building up or junk building up in the bin. And then from a pupation bin perspective, we actually add a little less moisture sources than we do in a full tray of mealworms, because they're not going to consume as much as those numbers start declining because they pupate. And as they get closer to pupation, they're going to eat and consume, and then they're going to stop. And that larva is going to transition over to a pupa. If you've got a setup where your large larva or your larvae are all together, and you start, you're just feeding them moisture sources, what I would suggest is, again, every 24 to 48 hours. Mealworms are very forgiving, though. That's not mandatory. Like, you don't have to go touch that bin every 24 hours. Do what works best for you by stretching that out. So let's say you only feed once a week, feed moisture once a week. They'll still survive. They'll still be fine. They're going to continue to grow. It just won't be as quickly. So on average, right now we're running about 2 to 3 months from an egg being laid to harvesting that tray. And that's with feeding Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If you only feed 1 day a week, I would project that that's going to extend out by several weeks, because they're not getting the moisture that they need by eating it. They're going to absorb it from the air if your humidity is high enough. But instead of growing, instead of using that energy to grow, they're going to use that energy to pull the moisture into their body. So always a good idea to keep them hydrated and to keep your humidity at about 40 to 50%. Really good questions. Thank you. Wally's here. He's got his coffee IV running. Mickey, welcome. Good to see you. Your order went out yesterday, by the way. Chuck, just got a bag of soft wheat bran. Does it need to be baked and frozen, or which one works best? Best is really relative to what works for you. So, like, from my perspective, I'm taking 4 50-pound bags of wheat bran and putting them in a deep freeze for 2 days, 48 hours, no less than 48 hours. That way the cold penetrates all the way into it and gets everything squared away. If you want to cook it, I can't cook that volume. It's not efficient from a time or an energy perspective to cook that much in an oven. I'd have to get a bigger oven and a whole big ordeal. But if you want to throw that into the oven, 100% okay thing to do. If that's something you've got time to do, if you use that oven then to just heat your house, like, context here really does matter as far as what's best and what works for you. So take a batch of that, and what you want to try to do, if you're going to do it in the oven or in a deep freeze, make sure that, like in the scenario here, we're stacking bags on top of each other, so it stays in there for 48 hours minimum, so it can get into and penetrate those thicker layers. If you're going to cook it, you want to make sure that the temps that you're going to hit, and I can never remember the temps because I don't do this myself, definitely check. Again, I'm going to refer to the co-op group and do a search on heat or heat treat or deep freeze, and you'll get the posts that have been out there with the different ways that folks are cooking their bran. But from a temperature perspective, you want to make sure that you hit the temperature in the center of that bran. So if you've got a container and you put it into your oven and it's that thick and it's that wide, hit the temperature in the middle, because that's going to be the lowest temp point, right? It's just like cooking meat. You're going to put that meat probe all the way in. You're not just going to look at the outside and say, yep, outside's good. And so I think which one is best, frozen versus or deep freeze versus oven, honestly, either one works. You don't want to use a conventional fridge freezer combo. That freezer in that, like the generally is what's in folks' kitchens here in the U.S. That freezer doesn't get cold enough. You need a deep freeze in order to get down to the 0 Fahrenheit. Really good question, Chuck. All right, so I am at Lucas's question here. So as you guys are asking more in there, I see Wally's down there. He's pretty impatient, so I'm just telling him, just calm down, Wally. Just calm down. I'll get there. All right, so Lucas, I want to do a wet specimen and suspend the level of growth for display purposes during reptile shows. Ooh, that would be interesting. Like in I'm envisioning like a solid block of see-through material like resin. Is that what you're thinking, Lucas? And suspend that mealworm in the middle, and that way you've got a specimen to put on display and on show. That would be really interesting. That'd be pretty cool to just have as like a desk ornament or something, right? Olivia, you are very welcome. We'll do some searching on the page. Wonderful answers. Woohoo. You are on your way. You're in the right place, too. So anytime you have any questions, and that goes for anybody here, I'm a big advocate of throwing those questions out to the group. Use that search function because a lot of questions have been thrown out and answered over time. And so one of the things I notice when I use the search is that it seems to be very haphazard on how it returns those to me. So I have to go and make sure that I'm seeing the most recent posts. And that way I can see what's been most relevant recently, and then get some good answers and feedback there. All right, Wally, you're up next, buddy. A recent video you did about mixing beetles per age for better results. Can you explain again here for us, please? Yes, so that was super interesting. I did a consult with some folks in Guatemala. They've got a mealworm farm. They're running a business to produce the mealworms and use it for aquaponics. Use the mealworms as a protein source for aquaponic growing of fish and shrimp and things like that. And then obviously the frass as a amendment as well. And one of the things that they talked about was that they will take their beetles when they do their beetle swap. So beetle swap is a routine thing for folks that have maybe 10 to 20 plus trays. In the smaller setups, you don't need to really worry about beetle swap. You can just put all your beetles in one tray and just keep refreshing your beetles. Throw newly hatched beetles in there, put a pupa tower in there, etc. But in the systems that are a little larger, it's beneficial to do a beetle swap and basically separate those beetles out, put the egg-laden substrate back in that tray and let it sit for a while, and take those beetles you've collected and put them into a fresh tray with fresh substrate. And what I've always done is I've always taken a tray, separated those beetles out, put the bran substrate, set it aside, and taken those beetles on their own and just put them into a fresh new tray. And then we keep that tray in rotation for 2 months, 8 weeks. And after that, so the beetles will lay 90 to 95% of their eggs in the first 2 to 3 months in an optimal scenario. And so we remove that tray because it's not producing enough to warrant the space that it's taking up. So it's kind of like a 1-to-1 where we separate the beetles, we put them back, all those beetles together, right? So if me and Wally are in a tray together as beetles, we're going to go back into that tray together, and we're going to stay together until our unfortunate demise. What these folks in Guatemala walked me through is they'll do that separation, right, where they separate the beetles out, put the bran back in, off it goes, right? Nothing changes there. But they take those beetles and they just collect them. They put them all in a container together for all of their trays. And then once they make new trays, all of those beetles that have been mixed up together essentially get added to the fresh beetles that they've been hatching. And then all of those now together get put into a tray. And so what that's doing is it's mixing age groups. And so what I'm curious about is what could or would that do to egg production, good or bad? And does that remove then the need to track ages? Because what'll happen is those beetles will eventually die off on their own naturally, but you're going to have a mix of young beetles and old beetles. And I think what that might help with is keeping all of your trays at a similar egg laying production level. With the method that I do now, one of the problems we have is that a brand new freshly hatched beetle tray that gets swapped this week is going to have way more eggs than a 2-month-old tray of beetles that are just about retired because they're laying less eggs. And what that means in the cycle is, so 2 months from now, that tray that had a whole lot of eggs is going to eat through all of its substrate much faster than the tray with mealworms that are older. And so now you have this imbalance where when you go to process and harvest, you've got trays that might have wheat bran in them still and trays that don't. And so will this other method of mixing all of those beetles together, would that tackle that problem? What I'll probably do is nerd out a little bit and do some data extraction analysis and just see like what that might look like. But that could be pretty interesting. And a lot of folks, so I posted about this Friday. I couldn't wait. Like, I reached out to them after the meeting and I said, I can't stop thinking about this beetle thing. Can I post something very generic? And you know, I didn't want to mention any of the other details we talked about. But can I post just this simple thing and see what's going on? And there are apparently quite a few people out there that are doing that. So I think what I might try to do, I'm one to always tinker and play, and sometimes I get caught up in that. But I think what I'm going to try to do is maybe take, you know, a stack of my trays. So right now I've got about 80 to 100 beetle trays. I might take 10% of those and do this process and see what happens over the next few months. You know, I'll have to document, track, keep that all squared away. But I think that could be pretty interesting. So that's what Wally was referring to there. Hopefully that helped out. I think that's much more of a, I don't want to say advanced thing, but like, it seems like it might make things simpler, but I'm not sure yet. I still have to think through all that. Really good question, Wally. All right, Chuck, you're going to put some in the freezer bags and freeze it. I'm sorry, I've got 2 freezers in the garage. Oh, perfect. Yeah, so throw some bags in there. And the other thing, Chuck, about parceling those out into separate bags is then it's just easy for you to go in, grab one, and use it when you need it. That way you don't have to mess with any kind of, you know, like processing or a giant bag somewhere. That'll work perfect. Lucas, liquid with ethanol alcohol. Interesting. Yeah, if you get to doing that, tinkering around with it, post it in the group. I think there might be a lot of people who think that's pretty cool. Vicky, you're welcome. You're welcome. Cheryl, I have a question on your fans. Are they circulating the air, running through a filter, or venting air? What do you use to measure particulates? Oh, Cheryl, that reminds me. Everybody get ready to do a bunch of thumbs up, hearts, tap the screen 1,000 times. So Cheryl, this brings up a really good thing I wanted to mention today. We have a giveaway going on right now in regards to your how do you measure particulates. There is a giveaway. It's pinned in the featured posts in the co-op group for folks in the U.S. and Canada. One winner in each place that will get an Inkbird air sensor. It's an 8-in-1 air sensor. It's what I use here in the farm. I've been very impressed with them over the long term here of using it for, I think I'm up to 8 or 9 months probably. And so Keith, a member of our group who is here today, Keith Sage, start throwing out hearts, happiness, send him some love, because he reached out to Inkbird and said, hey, we have a co-op group with a lot of people in it. Do you guys have any sort of, you know, like giveaways or discounts or something for large groups of people that could use your product? And sure enough, he got a response from one of their sales specialists, got some info, looped me in, and now we have that post that's a giveaway at the top of our page because of Keith. Absolutely amazing. So please go and enter that. I think there's 2 things you have to do. You have to go and comment on that post with your location, USA or Canada, and then you need to go to the Facebook group for Inkbird and join that, and then you're entered. And I think that ends March 2nd or 3rd. I don't want to leave any of the screens and mess anything up, but I think it's March 2nd or 3rd. And so huge opportunity. I think those sensors are about $199 US. I can't remember how much in Canadian, $239 or something like that. But if you don't win, we also have a discount. So they mentioned to Keith that, hey, we've got a discount link for you. Here you go. And so we've got a 25% off. I know it's 25 for US. And so there's a link in that post as well that if you don't win, go get one. They're awesome. Absolutely awesome. So the Inkbird one that I got, I tried a couple different models. And what I wanted to do was measure the particulates because I'm constantly wearing a face mask in there. But with the new building where it's at, I can now host people coming to the farm. And so what I didn't want to do is expose folks to things that would be bad for them, right? So like the frass gets in the air, the substrate gets in the air. It triggers my allergies. I don't want to impact that on anybody else. We've started to have folks bring their kids as well. I definitely don't want to do anything negative there. And so I wanted a way to see what the level of particulates are. And so right now, that Inkbird sensor, it's got temperature, humidity, CO2 levels, which are very interesting. I'm going to start analyzing that. Probably need to flush my air a little bit more. And this wraps all back into your question, I promise. But it's also got a particulate sensor on it. And so what I've noticed is if that, as we're exhausting air, it gets really, really low, like down into double digits. Below 50 sometimes. And then once it's off, once the exhaust is off, it's okay. It's not like there's an active explosion of stuff happening in there all the time. But once we get in there and start working, that thing just starts cranking up. And so it's a really good way for us to see, once we're done working, if I need to get some work done in the morning and I'm going to have folks come in the afternoon, it's a good way for me to make sure that things are okay. It might be a bit pricey for just a single small room, but the discount from Inkbird really helps. And I've noticed that their support team from Amazon is fantastic. So I actually had a problem with my unit when I bought my first one. It kept powering off. Like you can recharge it. It's portable, so you can take it wherever you need to go. I think it lasts about 4 to 5 hours on battery. Mine kept turning off. Couldn't figure out why. So they said, I couldn't figure out why. And I reached out to them directly. I didn't go through Amazon. Reached out directly and the answers I got back were, very spaced out, kind of odd. And so I returned it. And when I returned it, they reached out to me through Amazon and said, hey, can you help us understand why you returned it so we can talk with our R&D team and try to improve things? And so I told them, and they said, it sounds like maybe there was an outlet issue, could have been an issue with the unit. We're going to send you another one for free, and please test it out. And so I did, and same problem. And they said, try a different outlet. Different outlet worked. Turns out it was my problem. And so the outlet had to be adjusted. The unit was fine, and they worked through that with me. So the experiences I've been having with Inkbird are fantastic. And there's some other things coming, some more products that they have that we're going to be able to do some discounts on. So I'm excited about that. So that was a really long-winded thing. Keith, I wanted to get you some love for that. So to answer some of the other questions here regarding the fans. So I have 4 fans in there right now, and the goal of those fans is to circulate the air. I want that air circulating so that we don't get any hot pockets or cold pockets in the room. I want that temperature to try to be, as stable and moving so that we don't get really hot areas in the farm. And so those run constantly. They're always on. The other benefit to the fan, I have one that blows the humidifier. It's basically a plume that goes straight up. So there's a fan that blows that to get it dispersed out into the room. Then we have a greenhouse exhaust fan. I want to say it's a 12-inch, might be a 10-inch. And so we've got that set to a timer, and that runs 6 times a day for 30 minutes. I'm probably going to boost that up because what I'm noticing is the CO2 levels get high whenever that thing hasn't run for a while. And mealworms need oxygen, we humans need oxygen, so when I'm in there and I see it, I'll turn the exhaust on to pull some fresh air in, but I think I'm going to have to cycle that more frequently. I avoided doing it at night because I didn't want to pull in the really, really cold air and then have to heat it up. So I do need to look at maybe an air exchange that might take care of that, but we're not currently running any sort of filters. So I do have a fan filter, a squirrel fan filter with like regular house filters. But what I've found is the exhaust going out is getting those particulates gone. And so the filter isn't something that I've really had to try to mess with too much. because we're always wearing our face masks in there. Whenever we go in and start moving things around, it's usually fairly dusty anyway once we start really activating things in there. And so full face mask respirator whenever we go into the farm, period. The only time that we don't is if I'm doing a tour and I know the levels are good, or like today. It's exhausting right now, so if we need to go in there, I can go in there and won't have to wear the mask. So hopefully that helped, Cheryl. Really long one. We stayed on that one a long time. Let me do a quick touch base. So I am now at Christina's comment, and so I'll tackle that. We are at about the halfway point, so I can go a little bit long today. We'll do a small little wrap up at 11:30 or 30 minutes from now for those of you that have to get going. But if we do have some good questions or things we need to touch on, I'll try to go a little bit longer. All right, Christina, you're up next. Okay. Totally new to this. Planning to do the 3-door setup. Can the setup be permanently kept outside, like on my porch? My main purpose for farming mealworms is to feed my chickens, hopefully to cut way down on feed consumption. I didn't even know humans can consume them until this stream, so that's cool. Yes. Oh, we already have some replies here. Perfect. Oh, wait, maybe not. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. I'm not going to scroll too much further. Can they be kept outside? Yes. Depends on your temperature. Depends on, like one of the things I would want to think about when you're going to put things outside is where they or when could they get hit by the sun, because closed containers that get hit by the sun are going to heat up a lot and probably kill what's in there. So if they're in the shade, that can be helpful. Unless it's -20 like you're in Saskatoon, maybe they definitely need sunlight. But they can go outside. It really just depends on what your environment conditions are. So mealworms will thrive and do really well in about 80 degrees Fahrenheit and 50% humidity. They will survive much lower than that. So I have shipped insects when it's in the 30s. I have shipped insects when it gets colder. They can survive in some pretty awful conditions, but they will not thrive. So if you're at 80 degrees Fahrenheit, optimal, right? Let's say you go down to 70. If we're at 80 degrees Fahrenheit, it's probably going to take them about 2 months to get from egg to harvestable mealworm for your chickens. If you go down to 70 degrees, you're still going to get production, but it's going to increase that 2-month timeline. So it's going to get longer, right? It could be 2.5, 3 months. It just really depends on some of the other variables that are going on. But in general, as you start going down in temperature, your colony is going to slow down from a production perspective. So much better to keep the temperature somehow stabilized, and in that 70 to 80 would be much better than lower than that. But that being said, as long as it doesn't get too cold, if you're staying above 40s, 50s, if you're staying in that area and above, keeping them outside probably isn't going to hurt them. It's just going to take them longer to produce. Okay. And yeah, feeding them to chickens, that's how I originally got started. So chickens love them, especially the live ones. They'll eat the dehydrated ones. Those are still nutritious for them. The live ones have the moisture in there to help them with the digestion, and it's their natural instinct, right? They go after insects. That's what they do. So, all right. Sue's got a response here for Olivia. Thank you, Sue. Sue in the house. Wondering on the Black Soldier Fly saga. Okay. Lucas, Black Soldier Fly saga. Let me step away for just a second and get some Black Soldier Fly. So here's the tray of the larger ones. Raise that up just a little bit. So they're doing really well. Very encouraged by the first test run. I started with about 20 to 25,000 neonates, already hatched larvae, super small. And what I wanted to do was just get familiar with them. So right now I have I've taken a lot of the much larger ones and put them in a container in the farm that has a lid essentially on the top of it with mesh so I can see down inside of it, and the setup for them to hatch and see if they lay eggs. So far, I don't think we have anything that's flying around in there yet. I need to get the lamp set up. I still haven't done that so that it gets a definite 12 hours on, 12 hours off of light. But I'm pretty excited right now. What I am likely going to start doing is I'm going to reach out to, so I live in Ashland, Missouri, a small town, about 3,500 people. I'm going to start reaching out and seeing if there's a way for me to get food waste from restaurants in town and maybe some of the schools. I'm not thinking that's going to work out very well. Things here in the U.S. are very interesting around food waste, so I'm not quite sure how that's going to pan out. But that would be the goal, is to get some sort of food waste system so that I can pull that in, and then basically just prepare some of these trays, put the black soldier fly larvae in, and away they go. So the goal with that then would be to keep the black soldier fly and probably not reproduce them. I was just really interested about that, but I don't really have the time or the inclination to want to reproduce them. I'm just kind of tinkering right now with that. So overall, though, went really well. I was very surprised at how quickly they ate. I mean, I knew that they ate pretty fast, but to actually see it happen was wild. And the other interesting thing is, let me grab one here. They don't eat the peels or the rinds or anything on the outside. So like orange peels, apple peels, they just don't eat them. They don't like them. But processing was pretty simple. I used the same sifter set, that green sifter set that I used in the old farm. I used that to sift out, or to separate sizes, to sift out the really large stuff like that peel, and to separate the frass. The frass was nice and dry. It's not as dry as mealworm frass, but it wasn't like soupy. A lot of folks told me it gets really gross, but I didn't have that issue. So I'm pretty excited about it. I do have them up for sale on the website as an add-on item. I don't have a ton of them. It's not going to be a regular product yet, but so far the testing went really well, and I think it's something that I'll add into the farm overall. So thank you for the info, Lucas, on all the stuff that you sent me. I also have started quail, some personal quail, just for my family, and I've been feeding beetles from here. I'm going to try some of these larvae as well, and then the auto feeder. I'll do that at some point. Keith in the house. 8 in 1 unit is well worth it. Battery lasts 1 hour. 1 hour, man. Maybe that's an improvement we can talk to them about. All right. Sue with the replies. I love it. Thank you. Adding more context. Always good. Cheryl, you're welcome. You're welcome. Christina, I live in Texas, so that helps. Currently zone 8B. That you will get cold temperatures that aren't going to be good for mealworms, but you might get too hot in the summer, up above 85, and you start to run the risk of, as that duration of high temps increases and the density of your colony or the types of trays you have. If they're closed trays and they're holding that heat in, that they will die quickly once they hit that tipping point. All right. All right. Vicky, if you have time raising the house temp around 80, 85, would a humidifier help? Vicky, you could like maybe just a space heater. Obviously, get one that's approved and not going to burn anything down, and don't run it on an extension cord. But you don't have to do your whole house potentially. Could you do it in the room? Could you do it in, like I used to have my colony in a closet. So if you get the right setup and you can monitor that, potentially just heat that small area as opposed to an entire place. Lucas, coffee shop and breweries. That's a good idea, because the spent grain is already going to have moisture in it, right? Yeah. Awesome. All right, I think I am at the bottom. We are at the 10 after mark. Really good questions, guys. And then Sue, thank you so much for the replies and getting extra context in there. I'm starting to see some comments on the bottom. I don't know what I did, but I'm seeing them now. I'm not going to close that off, though. We'll keep that going. So I'm going to take a pause and drink a little bit. All right. If there's anything you guys want to see in the farm, I can walk in there and do that. things are just awry right now, all over the place in there because we were working yesterday. Yesterday was harvest and order day, so I did the harvesting in the morning and then got orders out. We've been running low on mealworms. The hot season starting basically where a lot of the birds are starting to come back and people are getting back into feeding their birds. So that's increased demand. And then from a local perspective, it seems like a lot more folks are grabbing that as well, likely from a bird perspective there too. And so I've been seeing a big increase in the last few weeks. So I did, anybody here that's raising them to sell or to think about that, I did communicate out to everybody on my subscription list, email subscription list, and then I posted as well to get the word out that, hey, it's that time. Inventory is going to get stretched. It's not something I want to do, but I do have to, limit inventory to some regard. So my personal perspective, or what I try to shoot for with the business is local demand gets first grabs, basically first dibs. Wholesale is next, and then website after that. I do also have subscriptions on my website, so those actually get dibs, you could say, if somebody has subscribed. So I don't know how anybody else might run what they're doing, but I did communicate that out. One of the things I found with the big shipping problem I had a month ago or so now was that good communication is going to solve quite a bit of it's going to be more proactive and solve a lot of problems that could happen. And so I knew my inventory was going to start to get low, and so I communicated that out. Starter kits have been pretty hot, so folks are starting to get in that more, and just had a whole lot of demand. So I did just update inventory on the mealworms this morning. Things are starting to pan back out there as far as availability. But it's just a balancing act because you also have to, as you're raising mealworms for your own use, like Christina with your chickens and other folks raising them, you're going to have that tendency to harvest your mealworms and then feed them to your chickens, right? Because the chickens are going to love them. You're going to feel good about doing that. But you have to remember to limit that and hold back a percentage of it to keep your colony going. Because if you feed those off now, you're going to suffer, but your suffering is not going to be for another month or two down the line as your production starts to decline because you haven't been pulling and holding enough back. And so one of the things as a seller that you have to be wary of and be aware of is not doing that, right? You want to get those things out there for folks that want to buy them, but you also don't want to reduce your colony in the long term. So been an interesting last couple of weeks, but things are going well. Message scroll is actually better today, but the threading is really strange for some reason. Yeah, I haven't been doing it on the phone too because I've got it up on the screen. I might actually do this more often because it was easier to see it on the screen than on the phone. But anywho, Chuck, at what age do you cut mealworms for fishing or sell so they don't pupate? I don't worry about the don't pupate part. What I've gotten good at is explaining why that's a good thing to customers. Customers aren't used to that, right? They buy mealworms and then all of a sudden they see a pupa and it's like, what happened? And so what I've done is I've transitioned that into a positive. And so a lot of folks are used to getting mealworms in big box stores, bait shops, etc., that are in cold storage, which will slow them down, or something's been done to them so that they don't pupate. There is a chemical that can be applied. It's a natural hormone, but it's applied en masse, and it will stop the mealworm from pupating. That's actually how they get giant mealworms. And so folks are just not used to dealing with that. And so when I started selling to people, what I would do is when I went through the harvest process, I originally sold large. Everything that went out the door was large. And what I found is because I didn't use any of the chemicals, people would get those, they wouldn't store them in the fridge, and all of a sudden, like, they would start going, right? Because as you ship them out, they're going to be stressed. They're already large anyway to start with, so they're going to be pupating in general. And it turned into a very big scenario where people were just unhappy about, hey, I ordered mealworms. What the heck are these things, right? And so at some point I switched to selling mediums, so average of 3/4 inch. That helps to cut down on the pupa issue. From a bait perspective, so fishermen want the larger ones, right? Because they're easier to get on the hook. My customer base is very small when it comes to the amount of folks that are using it for fishing. And so I will tell folks right out of the gate, there's a bait shop here in town. I'll try to pull the bigger ones for them. But in general, I tell them I don't use chemicals. They're going to be the size they're going to be. And that's as large as they can really get for a bait shop scenario. The other thing I'll do is I'll kind of use that. Somebody will reach out to me and say, hey, what is this alien looking thing? What's going on? This has never happened to me, etc. Hey, that's actually a pupa. That's the next stage for the mealworm. Two things. One, pupa are actually higher in protein than the mealworm. And so they're still a good treat for things like chickens. Before they harden up really, really hard, they could potentially be good for reptiles as well. Wally, I'm curious if you've ever fed your reptiles any of your pupa before. So it's actually more nutritious. And then the pupa showing up is proof that I, as a mealworm mealworm farmer, I'm not applying chemicals and hiding that from you, because if I put chemicals on it, you wouldn't get pupa. And so I try to turn that around into a positive for folks that haven't experienced that before. It's an education kind of thing. And at this point, I'm very comfortable with it because I've used those two things many times to let folks know that it's not a bad thing at all. Here's why you haven't seen it before, and here's why it's okay. So, Wally, pupa geckos. I've tried to ignore as the pupa don't move around a lot. Yep. So that they're going after the larvae that are moving. That's much more their natural instinct, right? If something's not moving, it's potentially not okay and not enticing either. So that makes sense. Chuck, thanks. It helps. That's something I'll be looking into in the future. Yeah, the selling thing is stressful and very anxiety inducing at first. At least it was for me, because I had no idea what I was doing. So if you get to that point, Chuck, feel free to reach out. I use bait cups, Fabri-Kal, Fabri-Kal. Let me check. Hold on. Yep, Kal. And I use different sizes. 8 ounce and 16 ounce are the prevalent ones. From like a selling perspective, it also really depends on what your agreement is with that store. So you could go through like a consignment scenario where you drop off or deliver or refresh those cups every week, every 2 weeks, whatever scenario works best for you in that store. And the store gets a smaller percentage of that sale because whatever doesn't sell, you take back. And so I do that with a couple stores. Well, I will deliver, let's say, 10 cups and just document that, hey, I delivered 10 cups. However many sold, so maybe it was 4 that week, I'll write down 4 were sold, and then we settle up at the end of the month, and they get a smaller percentage of that. The other scenario is just deliver those bait cups or cups, and the store outright buys them. And at that point, it's their inventory, their mealworms, etc. What I will say is, in the scenario where a store buys it outright from me, at the beginning, I don't put my business name on it. Because what happens at that point, you drop those things off, the store then takes ownership of that, and they take care of it or not care of it, depending on what's going on. And so what I'll do is I'll just put a generic label on it that doesn't have my information, so that if there's a negative experience there, there's the potential that it might have been my problem, could have been me, but once they start taking it on, take it, they own it, they're the ones taking care of it. If anything happens from that point, it's on them as well. So lots of different scenarios there, but happy to go over those at some point in the future once you get to that point. Hopefully you get there soon. All right. Oh man, there was a question from Keith and I didn't see it? Da-da-da. Oh, Keith Nixon. Okay. I just posted this question. How small of a filter is considered or used for frass? 30 mesh for frass, but some chewed up wheat bran will also fall through. Yep. I've tried, so I use 30 mesh right now, and my goal is to try to sift the mealworms after they've eaten through all of the wheat bran to help reduce that potential for wheat bran to be in there, or substrate, whatever it is, it's going to have some sort of particulates in there. But then, where was I going with that? Oh, I did try 40 mesh at one point, and it just took forever. The processing time more than doubled. It wasn't worth that. And so now what I'll do is when I prepare that frass and get it, I will tell folks there's no guarantee that there is zero substrate in here. But it's only going to be a very, very small percentage. You're going to have a hard time finding it, if any. And I could get you 100% non-substrate frass, but I'd have to quadruple your price. And at that point, they're like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. What that also means, though, if you use the 30 mesh, is that mealworm eggs can fall through that mesh. And so you need to be mindful that if you are harvesting your frass, if there are any beetles in that tray, that frass is going to have eggs in it. So one of the things we try to do here is to grab those trays prior to any pupa showing up. That's the ultimate goal, because then you got a rush going on. You got to get that tray tackled before those beetles show up. But in the rare scenario where we have a tray out of a bunch of them that might have a beetle or two, that basically goes into junk frass for us to use here around the farm, over at the garden, etc. It's not worth messing with heat treating or freezing to get rid of that right now for us. So, all right, Fred, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Welcome, Fred. Welcome. I don't know if I've been to New Mexico. I used to do a lot of traveling for my previous job. I feel like I was at some point. Keith, when filtering substrate, is 4 to 30 as small as they need to go? Anything smaller than 430? Oh, we just tackled that one. Wally, for store cups, have you thought about adding either some expanded crystal gel or a carrot in the cup to help hydration if some are not sold, and go that whole week on the shelf? Yes, but I don't do that because the holes in the tops of these things are pretty small. And so if you put any amount of hydration in here, what generally happens is it'll build up on the top and usually causes more problems than it's worth. Mealworms can go a super, super long time without food or moisture. And so sitting there for a week isn't going to be detrimental to them. So I put wheat bran in with the mealworms. That gives them something to crawl around in and breaks up the density, especially in the 1,000 count cup, because that gets a little thick, but the substrate gives them more room to move around, and they can chew on it a little bit. But throw the mealworms in the fridge and they'll slow down. They don't need moisture. Like the mechanism or the routine to take care of them, if you are going to cold storage them, you only have to take them out once a week, once every 2 weeks, depending on what you're going to do. So I haven't gone through the process of adding it. The other thing is, if we had to add that in to each cup, it also increases the amount of time it takes for us to make those cups. And so it's another, it seems like it would be a small amount of time, but it's another thing. You have to be consistent with it, et cetera. So it just isn't something that we've messed with right now. And only do that with mealworms. So there's a comment here about superworms afterwards. Don't put superworms in the fridge; they'll die. For the superworm cups, I also don't put any moisture in there, because what I've been doing is I did a test a long time ago where I just left them in a cup at room temperature for 2 weeks, and they were okay, right? Like the trick to that, though, or the reason that was okay, is right before I cupped them, I fed them and hydrated them for 24 hours. I gave them the opportunity to consume for 24 hours to get them ready for that. If you don't do that, then that's going to potentially impact that timeline of how long they can stay in that cup and be okay. Donna, will my superworms eat each other, and is it even feasible to raise them at all? Will they eat each other? Yeah, they'll cannibalize, but not like crazy. As long as they're fed and taken care of, they don't go crazy. It's not like you're going to lose 50% of your stock every time, right? Is it feasible to raise them at all? Yes, it's feasible. People do it. I did it years ago as just a supplement, basically. What I found is that folks that were coming to me for mealworms also wanted other things, right? The Wallies of the world. That, hey, I've got all these reptiles, and they don't just eat mealworms, Justin. Come on, where's the rest of this stuff? And so I did superworms for a while, hatched my own beetles, raised them out. Superworms take a much longer time to go, and superworms are much more prevalent to disease than mealworms. So mealworms are a species that thrive in dense populations, right? And so they are made that way. That they've been, whether it's evolution, whether that's just how they're made, whatever your thoughts are, they do well in dense populations together. So the larvae do great. They'll pupate. They might cannibalize their pupa a little bit, but they will thrive and be just fine in very dense populations. However, or to the flip side of that, superworms don't. Superworms are not meant to be in a highly dense population for long periods of time. And so they are more prone to, it's possible, right? You can do it, you can farm them and raise them, but they're more prone to getting diseases. So things like denzovirus, that's a real big one that goes around every few years, and it just wipes out the entire superworm colony. Think of it like us humans. If you put 2 humans into an elevator, it's not that big of a deal from a contagion or like somebody sneezes. Oh, you can step back and, But if you've got 30 people in one elevator, we're not made to be that dense, right? And so superworms are the same way. I will probably tackle superworms again in the future, raising them myself. But right now I get superworms from Justin down at went to Florida. Justin down in Sunshine State Worms. Great guy to work with. Superworms are fantastic. Haven't had any issues. And so I grab those as an option for my local folks to supplement the stores here, and a couple of customers that I've had for a very, 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 very long time that I want to continue providing good value to. I don't have them on my website anymore. It's just the mealworms because it became too big of an issue. I got that virus at one point, tried to do it again and raise them, and it did not go well. So I focused on mealworms and paused on the superworm thing. All right. Sue, you don't see the cups on Fabri-Kal website. Who do you know? Do you know what they call them? Yes, these are PK16S. Looks like the code. I actually get these from Knutsons, Knutsons. When I reached out to Fabri-Kal directly, they sell in enormous bulk quantities. And so at the time, 4 or 5 years ago, I couldn't buy the quantities they were talking about. And so I found Knutsons, which is in Michigan, and I ordered some 6 or 8 months ago. Great service, good cost. Haven't had any issues. And it's not on their website, Knutson's website, so you have to call them and talk to them to get your order placed and paid for. All right, we've only got 3 minutes left to our scheduled session, so there's a couple more comments here that I'll get to, but let me do the quick wrap up for the folks that might have to step away. So this was all recorded by Facebook. We'll get it posted to the co-op group page once they do their checks to make sure we haven't done anything bad here. And so all of the questions, all the answers that have been put into the chat will be there. And then we'll take that and throw it out on YouTube because there are folks that want to see this info that don't have Facebook. And if there are any questions here that I didn't touch on, I'll go back through those comments, reply to those, and get you squared away. I'll try to get another one scheduled for not next week, but the week after. Start doing these every 2 weeks. That seems more feasible than trying to jam one in and surprise folks with one last minute. And I'll try to hit different days and times. And so, like this one was Tuesday morning, the next one might be Thursday afternoon, etc. We'll try to move things around to accommodate schedules and get as many opportunities as we can for folks to join. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to reach out to me directly as well via DM through Facebook or email me, Justin@MidwestMealworms.com. Happy to help. So Thank you all very much for joining. Awesome questions. I'm going to keep going through a few more of these. I have a few more extra minutes, and we'll get things wrapped up. All right, so just a 5-gallon bucket of frass. This is from Sue. 5-gallon bucket of frass on Sunday that had been sealed for 6 months. Found enough worms to start a new bin. It's wild, isn't it? Like, you wouldn't think that anything could survive. One in nothing, like just poop, right? It's not. There's got to be some nutritional value in there for them, right? Like how else are they doing that? Maybe it's just they're consuming that brand that's made it through that 1/30th mesh sifter, Sue. I wonder if that same thing would happen if we do like 1/40th, or I don't know. Yeah, it's absolutely wild what they'll do. Keith, I may use salad dressing cups for my bait shop, 25s and 50 count. Yes, like the little like 1 or 2 ounce cups. That come with lids. Like in the U.S. here, they sell those in bulk at Sam's, Costco, those kinds of places, restaurant supply stores online. And so those work perfectly good. What's really nice about those is they're clear. And so what I haven't tested is how solid is that lid. Can you put that lid on without having to poke a hole in the top or something, right? That would just be another process thing you'd have to think about or do, is to put a hole in each one of those. You could drill one, like get a stack of them and drill down, or get a hot poker and potentially just poke a hole through that plastic real quick. But those would be good for low quantities. And bait shops generally want lower, right? And stores in general, right? So if you're going to sell your mealworms, the folks that are going to buy those generally want more quantity, more bang for their buck, right? The retail stores don't like to sell the larger quantities because they want you back in the store. They want the foot traffic. They want you back in to spend more money, right? And so bait shops especially, and it's also a use thing, right? Like, why would a fisherman come in on a Saturday morning and buy 5,000 mealworms? They're not going to do that, right? So I think those quantities are good, Keith. Check with the store, make sure they're cool with that. But that seems like a good idea. The salad dressing cups. Wally asking Justin for more feeder options. Justin introduces Midwest Dubia. We'll do a little sneak peek at the end of this. Stick around. Got a surprise for you, Wally. Rodney, what are some signs of your worms having a virus? So the Denso virus that I mentioned before, Rodney, was specific to superworms. I haven't seen it cross over to mealworms. When I had it, it didn't, there was no way that things didn't get contaminated from the perspective of Denso not getting into my mealworms. From the sifters, from my hands. I didn't realize I had it until I had already been messing around with it. But the signs of it are the superworms will start to get squishy. Think of it like rotting food, right? Like when food is able to dry and not contain, that moisture is not contained, it just dries up, right? And it doesn't stink terribly bad, and it's not gross. What the Denso virus did to the supers is they got this weird color. It was like an amberish, gross brown color, and then they were squishy. And so now I can see it, and I know right away that's going to die. So it got kind of real squishy, gross, black, and then the entire worm turned just black, and it was gooey. The antithesis of that, or the opposite of that, is when a standard healthy superworm dies, it seems like, and I don't think it's just because they're drying out, but it seems like the other supers in there will go and consume some of the insides, right? Get some of that juiciness, or it's just dry. It's drying enough that it evaporates. Whatever happens when a superworm dies from not Denso virus, it doesn't turn into this goopy, soupy, gross thing. But you'll start seeing that in the tray. And they'll just, they'll be real lethargic. They'll get real slow. And then they'll start turning that weird color. And once you've got it, there are places that are still trying to figure out how to deal with this, both proactively and reactively. Folks have cleaned all their stuff, bleached, vinegared, chemical sprayed, and it keeps happening. Entire farms get wiped out. They'll clean everything off as best they can, and then try again, and same thing. it's an awful thing to have, unfortunately. So. Oh, Wally with the plug again. Thank you, sir. Vicky, I appreciate it. I appreciate the emails. I really do. Keith, you're welcome. All right, so one more question. I'm gonna hit Steve's comment, and then I'm gonna do a little sneak peek for Wally, and then we'll wrap things up. So Steve, when do you start adding moisture food to your egg bins? So I've got two pieces of feedback for you on that one. What we used to do is I would not feed moisture to those bins until I could see the mealworms. And seeing was probably right about 4 weeks or so. And so it was, like move the bran around and then physically with the naked eye be able to see them. And then I would add in moisture, very low amounts, right? Because when they're smaller, they're not going to consume as quickly. And so what I found is that things are more prone to dry out if you feed the smaller bins or the smaller larvae the same amount as a tray with larger. Which makes sense. I don't know why I didn't think of that before I actually did it, but I did. Wasted a lot of potatoes. So that's what we used to do. What we do now is actually spray the small larva trays with water. So I originally purchased an ATV spraying tank kit, one of those things that sits on an ATV and then has a wand and a small little hose and a little 3 horsepower, I think, 3 liters. I can get you that info if you need it. But a very low volume, not a big hefty thing to just spray water. And what I would do is we wait until, so we do beetle swap, and then we wait 1 week before we'll start spraying that tray. And then those trays get sprayed Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 times a week, with just the young ones get a quick spurt. And then as we age up and go into the older trays, they get a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. I don't have a measurement on that. A little squirt is what I started with. The goal is to have that moisture gone within 24 hours. So don't spray so much that you flood that tray, right? That's not good. They're not going to survive that. Spray enough to get the top where it needs to be nice and moist, and then it dries out within 24 hours or is consumed. What I noticed with that is we don't get hard crusty buildup on top. We're using wheat bran. It doesn't create a paste or a top or a crusty top level or anything like that, because the mealworms will come up and they will start to eat it. Now you will get that crusty layer if you put in too much moisture, or you have because you have too few mealworms in there to consume what you sprayed in there. So what I advocate whenever folks are interested in this, the first thing that folks are going to tell you or say to you about spraying is you're going to get mold. Oh my gosh, you will have mold. Don't do it. That same thing can be said about any moisture source you put in that bin. If you put too much moisture in there, whether it's carrots, potatoes, things from your garden, whatever it is, spraying water, if you put too much in, you're going to have mold. So take it easy. Get a little spritzer bottle, spray it in there, and just observe and see how it goes in your colony, in your trays. If you have trays that you close and all that is fairly sealed, it's going to hold that moisture in. You're going to need less than if you're in a dry, arid environment with open trays, right? So everything is contextual to what you're doing. Start slow and just spray a very little amount and then see how it goes. So, all right. We're going to go look at something in the farm, and then we're going to wrap up. So Wally made a comment about, hey, plug here for some dubious increase. Do some more stuff, Justin. All right, Wally. Now we're in the farm. Now we're going to come down here. One little tray. Working on it, buddy. I'll get there. I started this like a year ago, just to tinker and play. Feeding them a little bit. I know it's not optimized, but we'll get there. All right, we're going to close things out Thank you guys for joining. Thank you for all the awesome questions. Anything you guys need, please post it in the co-op group, post it in the comments, and everybody will help out. So thank you all very, very much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you soon. Bye.